Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Gridiron Review. Alongside Bill Wagner, I'm Pete Medhurst. And Bill, in the Youth League, this is obviously the favorite time of the year, playoff time, where everybody thinks that, look, we're playing for this little plastic trophy, but you would think we're playing for millions of dollars and all of your favorite beverages that you could consume and food for a year. Great opening weekend, great highlights here because it's funny, you and I were sharing some of the information about the highlights. Great game. The Varsity U League this year, top to bottom. Varsity U, American, second division now in the playoffs, which is national, and the Varsity Central. Pal's been very good in that division. But the American division, top to bottom, so good all season long. Any of the teams in the 5, 6, 7, or 8 could jump up and beat the 1, 2, 3, or 4 with a good performance. Open. But what was funny was we were talking about, a guy like P.J. Pokness who's playing for Crofton, whose dad played at Southern.
Great fullback, Jason Pokness.
Right.
He ran Myron's play really well.
Exactly right. See, you remember, Bill. I love it.
Yep.
And that was a great play. We faked out for years, named after the great Myron Fuller, who played fullback at Southern.
And that was one of the great Southern backfields because you had Corey Conti, who won the Rhodes Trophy that year, Jamar Mullen, who played at Army, and Pokness. So 3 great backs. That's why Southern, I think they went to the state finals that year.
We lost to Damascus in a monsoon in a game that should have never been played. The quarterback on that Damascus team, Kevin Thompson, went on and played at Penn State. If it doesn't rain that day, we beat them because we had one of the fastest teams in the history of high school football. It was a really good team. Joey McCaffrey at quarterback of that club is a really good team for Buck Gardner. But obviously, this Crofton team gets the job done against SRYA, and I love the enthusiasm of people like Rick Geckler, who coaches the Crofton team, and he and that coaching staff. These are guys that show up on Saturday. They just coach. Whether they win or lose isn't really what's important. If you follow this Crofton team all year, Rick has done a great job at getting his kids out to different schools. Saw them at a St. Mary's game. Jason Boudroni's staff was very good, and Rick and his staff and parents were very appreciative of the fact that Jason Boudroni's team took the time to interact with them and really showed their kids what a high school football program is all about. So those kids at the varsity level who are playing high school next year have something to think about. And to me, and I know Rick, like everybody else, wants to win every game. We all want to win everything we're competitive in. But Rick's got the big picture in his sights with these guys, and I think sometimes because we are so quick to honor those who win, we don't necessarily honor the people like this who have the big picture in mind for their kids.
Right. Well, and there's some issues cropped up again this weekend, and mind you, this was with Central Division playoff games, and Central is supposed to be the instructional level. It's not, the American is supposed to be the more competitive, but obviously we got some parents who are a little overly competitive and get a little overly excited in Central Division, which is disappointing to hear. But we talk about sportsmanship, and Rick Gettler, as we look at the highlights here, I'll read you some of the information, but the first and foremost I want to say, he gives credit to South River Youth Association, his team that he played this past weekend, said they had a couple great games, and in his email he made sure to highlight one of their players and just talked about how well SRYA played. That's sportsmanship. Crofton jumped out ahead 16-0 in this game. Shane Toll to Cole Carter for a touchdown pass. But coming back for South River, Cash Herndon was the quarterback for South River. He threw a touchdown pass. And then Crofton got the game-winning touchdown. Quarterback Bobby Keene with the throw to P.J. Pokness. That's our kid, Jason's son. And at the very end, South River put a drive together. They were down on the goal line, could have scored the game-winning touchdown. And Brendan Nevels made a big play. He sack and forced fumble recovered by Cole Carter, who we mentioned previously. But 2 great games between SRYA and Crofton. And as Coach said, either team could have won this game. No doubt about it. Coming up this week, full flight now. We got the Americans in play this week, as well as National and Central action in the playoffs. Go to aacounty.org, the football schedule page for the entire list of great
schedule of action. The one division I want to highlight again, I mean, this American division in the 8 and under, having been out at a couple of their games during the course of the year, any one of these 4 teams can win this 8 and under bracket. It's just been an absolute joy to watch these guys play. Top seeded Generals Highway takes on number 4 seed Old Mill. That'll be at Arundel Saturday at 1:30. And then the number 2 seed Chargers take on Brooklyn Park at 10:30. That'll be at Glen Burnie High School. And again, as I said, look, I know they're 8 and under kids, but they play the game at a really high level.
We had some highlights early in the season, and we could see that they were playing on the high level, and they had some darn good athletes out there.
Yeah. Good coaches, good athletes, and it should make for a great start to the weekend coming up on Saturday.
Do you have some news for us, Pete, about championship weekend?
Championship weekend. The American games on Saturday. They are going to be at the new football stadium at Severna Park High School.
That is wonderful news. That's going to be a great day, and that stadium is beautiful. It's going to be a great setup, and it'll be nice. The games have been at Northeast for a while, and prior to that, they'd moved around, so there's a new location. Severna Park, the brand new facility, lots of parking, should be a good day. Yeah,
hopefully we can get everybody to behave themselves. Officially, as of our taping, the carnage from this past weekend, 2 coaches, 1 player, ejected from football games. I don't know how we do it. I don't know how it happens. I really don't.
2 things before we sign off on our youth segment. Number 1, I had the pleasure 2 Saturdays ago of going out for the dedication of the Vince DiPasquale Memorial Field at Bayhead Park. Beautiful sign. Vince's family was there, his widow and both of his sons unveiled the sign. I had the pleasure and really the honor of speaking. I knew Vince very well. That was a great event, and I'm really glad they named that field in honor of Vince. And then, Pete, you and I last week, we were at a retirement party for Mike Bush, and nobody has done more for Anne Arundel County Recreation and Parks than Mike Bush. You want to talk facilities? We talk all the time about these beautiful turf fields. Well, there's one man solely responsible almost for bringing those turf fields to every single high school, and some high schools have more than one now.
Guess who's responsible for those?
Mike Bush was there. Pete was there as well and did a nice question and answer segment with Mike. Mike had an impact on both of our lives, and we just want to say congratulations, Mike, on your retirement. You did an incredible job for Anne Arundel County. Your thoughts, Pete?
39 years of doing anything is extraordinary. 39 years of being available to the constituents of your county. And let's face it, as they talked about, and many others talked about that night, when Mike, Dick Duden, Joe McClain and those guys all got in there wasn't a whole lot going on in terms of organization for kids in Anne Arundel County. It was a bunch of organizations kind of hodgepodging things together to make some things happen.
They took it to another level.
They completely got things organized, took it to another level, of course, which we still have today. And for Mike and all those folks, just an amazing run of 39 years. And, somebody that's had an influence on my life since I was 12 years old. Just an extraordinary night. And I'm glad we finally were able to honor Mike last week in Quiet Waters Park. Coming up, our high school segment. We're starting to see clearly now there's only really one spot that's available in the playoffs. And they play each other this week. Winner take all. Go to the playoffs. How about that? Old Mill and South River. We'll talk about that in our high school segment coming up on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back to the Gridiron Review, high school segment time. And Bill, when 2 teams who have played essentially nothing but close games most of the season get together, you do not expect 44-9.
No, I was shocked.
Amon Middleton made sure that Annapolis was not going to have to play in a close game this week, single-handedly dominating the effort against Severna Park. And, the Panthers, at least mathematically, hanging around in the 4A East race, but really looks now like there's going to need some significant help mathematically to get that to go their way. But what a performance by Amon Middleton. And right now, Bill, it's going to be hard in my mind to keep him off first team all-county with the performance week after week. He's 200-plus yards.
Right, well, I think he may be leading the county in rushing. If not, he's right up there. I know Raheem Tall's probably in that conversation. But, Coach Nick Good-Malloy from Annapolis had told his players, we don't want this to be close because that may not bode well for us because Severna Park has done a very good job of winning close games this season, whereas Annapolis has lost several close games. So they took that right out of the equation. Dion Hunt is another guy, had a big game on both sides of the ball, I believe. Had like 75 yards rushing, 8 tackles on the defensive end. And apparently he's been injured, so it's a big player to get back into the fold at the end of the season. Huge win. You know, this obviously is a long-standing rivalry. Back in the old days, Al Larimore from Annapolis and Andy Borland from Severna Park were very, very good friends. And that kind of made and in those days, Annapolis and Severna Park were the two big schools back. You're talking about the 70s into the early 80s.
You didn't have Broadneck then to take away kids from either side, which they do
now.
well,
and the private schools weren't as much of a factor in terms of taking players away. So Annapolis and Severna Park, always a big rivalry game, usually played at the end of the season. Great win for Annapolis, you got to say. I mean, man, I am really, like you said, surprised by that score. I expected a close game. I made the mistake. I picked Severna Park because I've seen Severna Park had really come on strong of late and had some very good wins. So that is huge for Annapolis.
The math still adds up. Annapolis, what it helps them, they play Broadneck. So if somehow they could stun the undefeated Bruins, that's
a lot of bonus points coming their way.
That's 17 points minimum for winning that game, and that would really put you in a great position at 6-4. Old Mill and SR or South River appears to be the other scenario here, where if the winner of that game may benefit the most if Annapolis does not upset Broadneck, and it looks like the winner of that contest would go forward. And again, the Patriots this close again against another solid foe. But how many times have we seen it from Arundel? Being behind has not fazed them in the second half of football games this year, as Austin Sly and company come back to win a thriller 26-21.
Right, well, we should say that Pete and I were out in sunny San Diego, but here we know on Friday night it was raining.
Terrible.
Big pouring rain, and so this game, as all of them Friday night, was played in a torrential downpour. And I think, what is it, Jordan Andrews, the running back, who was for Arundel, had a huge game.
Had the game-winning go-ahead touchdown for Arundel.
For like 175 yards or something.
And ironically, 178 on 24 carries. But isn't it ironic, as we've talked about it this year, how Arundel has almost become ground and pound? They've still got the great passing attack with Sly to complement it. But this is as consistent as we've seen Arundel put up these kind of numbers in the running game in a while, and they found a way to play. And right now, here they are sitting at 8-1 again, looking at the number 3 seed for the playoffs coming up. With a little help, maybe they can move up to 2 if North Point were to lose. But North Point beat a 6-2 Calvert team last week by like 600 points. So,
yeah, right. Well, that's what Coach Jack Walsh had said. We might be able to steal the number 2 seed, but they're number 3, and I think Arundel could beat North Point if they end up having to see them. I guess that would be on the road, would it not be?
Yes.
Arundel at
they are
North
the 3.
Point?
North Point beat a 2. It would definitely be down.
I think Arundel could beat North Point down there in Waldorf. It's been a very good season for Arundel, and as you mentioned, they've been down in several games. They were down to Meade, down to Annapolis. Then here in the Old Mill game, they fell behind in the second half. So this is a team with a lot of perseverance.
Wildcats led 20-8, trailed 21-20, and a big 4th down pass interference penalty kept the drive alive for Arundel. Then Sly hit Weinstein for a big gain, and that set up the heroics on the ground for Arundel for Jordan Andrews, and they win it by a score of 26-21. How about Annapolis Area Christian School? 5th consecutive C Conference appearance in the finals coming up with a 7-0 victory. Ryan Eidelman with the only touchdown of the contest for AACS. Big B Conference matchup, and St. Mary's hung in there with Pilate, but Pilate just too much defensively, winning it by a score of 14-0 to solidify things over on the B Conference side.
It's interesting. Do you think in most sports, if you really are dominating at one level, the MIAA forces you up? And I'm wondering why Annapolis Area Christian School doesn't go up into the B Conference. They beat Severn earlier this year. Yeah. They can hang with St. Mary's, Severn, those types of teams. I'm wondering why they don't move up, because they're The
problem is, I think, in the C, if you move them up, I'm not sure how many people are remaining in the C.
Right. Well, usually what they do is they move one up and move one down.
Yeah.
But that may be the problem. There may be not a team currently in the B that deserves to go down.
Personally, I think they should just combine the B and C conference. I don't think there's a whole lot of difference really between those two sides right now. I think the A
that
conference
Concordia
still
Prep is in C conference, and they are recruiting I mean, they have built a program overnight. And so, yeah.
It doesn't take long, really.
No.
If you've got the money behind your operation.
Right, if you're committed. So, but I agree. I think maybe you just make them one conference or one large, I don't know how that works mathematically in terms of schedules, et cetera.
Jason Carcamo and Andre Woods, 278 yards combined on the ground. Ethan Williams sets the state record.
He sets the state record every week,
seemingly every week. Career receiving touchdowns. Look, Glen Burnie hung around here with Broadneck for a little while.
They did.
Give him go for some credit for hanging in this game, but Broadneck eventually wins it by a score of 26-7.
Broadneck better not go to sleep on Annapolis, because if Annapolis grounds and pounds, if they run the ball and hog the ball, then they could keep that explosive Broadneck offense off the field. But Broadneck better not think that their undefeated season's settled just yet.
They won't. They'll take them seriously, I'm sure. Jaden Umbarger, 11 of 14, $172, 3 scores. He also rushed for 188 yards for Spalding.
Navy recruit.
Beat Gilman 47-0.
Yeah, well, Gilman's program, ever since Biff Poggi and all his cohorts left to go to St. Francis, they have not taken football nearly as seriously as and then they lost the coach to replace Biff, Tim Hawley left, so they got a brand new coach in there. Gilman's down.
South River beat North County 16-6. Joe Foy rushed for 142 yards, 28-yard touchdown, as the Seahawks, of course, keeping their playoff hopes alive in that one. Meade comes from behind to beat Northeast 23-17 in overtime, drops the Eagles to 6-3. But
it's a good win for Meade.
It's a very good win for Meade. Eagles still very much in the 3A East playoff race, though. Looks like Chesapeake has clinched the top seed with that Northeast loss, by the way, after beating Southern 28-9. Very tough environment to play that game Friday night down at Southern. Chesapeake and Southern playing despite the fact that Southern teacher Heather Weibel was killed in an auto crash Friday morning on her way to school at Southern.
Very beloved math teacher.
Yeah, really, really surprised they didn't maybe push that game back a day.
I know.
Could have probably done that, but still, to ask those kids to play in that environment, both sides handled it with class. The other night, they had a very nice moment of silence for her before the game. Chesapeake improves to 7-2 with the victory. Coming up, we'll talk colleges and pros, the amateurs and the Joes. Coming up, Redskins 5-2.
They're good.
By the way, guess who's back in first place in the AFC North? Steelers. I told you they'd get back there. We'll talk about that when we return on the Gridiron Review. Welcome back. Redskins in the win column as they get by the New York Giants. Ravens lose, very frustrating fashion at Carolina. The Ravens defense hasn't been terrible this year. This was the first time they got run over. Maryland ran over Illinois, and Navy loses in San Diego to Notre Dame. The great thing about being in San Diego, though, Bill, and as someone who does a lot of sailing,
because you went to the Baja Club and had a good dinner.
We did. We're right on the Pacific Ocean.
Beautiful.
There are far worse places you can eat than being on the shores of the Pacific Ocean, correct?
No, yeah. Joe Miller told me it was a very good meal and a beautiful setting, and he really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's beautiful out there in San Diego. It seems like it's always 70 degrees. I landed, and that airport's right there along the harbor, and as you take the Uber to the hotel, you go right past the beautiful harbor with the sailboats on their moorings and aircraft carriers in the distance. So it's pretty cool setting.
Made you want to get aboard a boat, didn't you?
Yes, it did.
You wanted to go out there. Look.
Instead, I was staying at a hotel in Mission Valley, which is a little out of town.
We were in La Jolla.
Hotel rate, yeah, that's where you want to be.
Right.
That's beautiful. But hotel rates in San Diego for this weekend were through the roof.
By
and
the
I
way,
did not get to stay in the gas lamp district like I normally do.
By the way, gas, $3.95 a gallon.
Woo, yes.
$3.95 a gallon. So if you think we have it tough here, $3.95 a gallon in San Diego. Look, number 3 team in the country looked like it. They jumped out 27-0. Handling their business. Navy showed a lot of fight against their first teamers in the second half. Actually outscored Notre Dame 22-17 in the second half of play. Some bright spots to build forward with, but right now Notre Dame just a much better team and much further along right now than Navy is.
Notre Dame came out and just took care of business. I mean, they definitely did not overlook Navy. They were on point both offensively and defensively. And to me, turning point right at the beginning of the game. Sean Williams forces a fumble. Navy recovers at the 36-yard line of Notre Dame. That's a golden opportunity to punch one in and jump up 7-0 and really put a stunner, stun the Irish a little bit. And, Navy doesn't even get a first down and had to turn it over on downs. Zach Abey stopped a yard short on 4th down. And really, to me, that was a huge turning point. You cannot miss on those chances
right.
like that. And And the defense, again, just, but it's Notre Dame. They can run it, they can throw it. But the Navy defense this has been a tough season all along for Navy defense. They just haven't stopped anybody, really.
Meanwhile, this week they'll head to Cincinnati to take on the once-beaten Bearcats, beat SMU in overtime. Maryland, every week, Bill, it seems like it's a different guy from Maryland. This week, Javon Leak is the big man on campus as they smash Illinois. One game away from being bowl eligible. They've got to beat Indiana because they're not going to beat Michigan State, Penn State, who remain on their schedule, in Ohio State. No. But Indiana's the big game remaining. They beat the Hoosiers, and they're going to go to a bowl in a season of chaos, which is just utterly amazing. Right, and they're about to, I think some decisions are on the pending at any moment as to what's going to happen across the board. Head coach DJ Durkin, athletic director Damon Evans, and President Wallace Lowe, and a lot of the academic folks are pushing back because it's kind of like a battle. The people that are big athletic boosters want to try to put this on Wallace Lowe. I don't think Wallace Lowe is, as a president of a university, he's not micromanaging the football program. And I have to say, I'm sorry, I love DJ Durkin. He's been to our Touchdown Club banquet many times, but for you to say that you don't oversee your own strength and conditioning coordinator, that you're not responsible for what he's doing. Reports directly to him. Yeah, you hired him. He was your signature hire, his first person you hired. And anyone who knows even anything about college football knows that the strength and conditioning coordinator is really the football coach, one of the most important people in his program, because he's the one who trains your players. So for DJ Durkin to tell the board that is overseeing this and looking into this mess that he is not responsible for his own strength and conditioning coordinator is a joke. So anyway, but moving on to the game, they do have an embarrassment of riches in the backfield, and Leak is just the latest to run wild. They've got McFarland. Lorenzo Harrison, Jake Funk are out, injured. Trayvon Johnson, Fleet still. Davis, Ty Johnson. They have really, really deep in the backfield. They've got a nice building block here. The coach is going to inherit a pretty good roster when and if they can finally get some continuity and some stability in the program. But glad to see the kids who are accomplishing these things. And I think that's the one thing that in all of this shadow of the Durkin controversy, we continue to forget that the kids are doing an amazing job on the field amidst all this chaos for Maryland. Pros, Redskins, Adrian Peterson goes 64 yards to slam the door on the Giants, 149 total. Washington, not pretty, but they beat the Giants 20-13. They now sit at 5-2 with the Falcons, who have no defense remaining for all the injuries, coming to town next week. All right, well, this Redskins defense is legit, and it just goes to show what happens when you have a dominant defensive line. Ioannidis, we talk about Jonathan Allen and the rookie from Alabama. But Ioannidis is playing great football. For all of the Khalil Mack celebration this year and how he got off to a great start early in the year in those first couple games, Matt Ioannidis now has more sacks than Khalil Mack by a half sack, 5.5 to 5. He has been a playmaker. He's been disruptive, but that defensive line is really where it all starts. And the Redskins can play some defense. I think Swearinger had a big game this week. Swearinger's playing at all-pro level. Yes, he is. Him and John Allen both playing at all-pro level. Meanwhile, the Ravens. Look, the offense wasn't great. Turnovers put the defense in a bad spot. And finally, it caught up to Baltimore Panthers with Cam Newton. Cam Newton's okay. It wasn't earth-shattering, 219 yards passing. But, when you get shorter field position, you don't necessarily have to pass for as many yards. Newton ran for 52 more. And for the first time this year, the Ravens' defense just succumbed to the other team. And Carolina wins it by a score of 36-21. Right. It's hard to win on the road in the NFL, but this is a little bit of a surprise. And thought the Ravens would show a little bit more in an important game, and now they're 4-4. They're a 500 team. Everybody was getting excited. Third place in the division now. Yeah, everybody's getting excited about the Ravens, and this could be a great team go to the playoff. And all of a sudden, they have backslid. And that's what happens when you lose to the Cleveland Browns and some other games that they could have won, should have won. And but now the Ravens are suddenly in crisis. You're 4-4, and you got to find some wins. Their playoff hopes could be slipping away quick. By the way, I'll remind you that the same Cleveland Browns who fired Hugh Jackson this morning as their coach. So Hugh Jackson, who, by the way, what a great world the NFL is. 3-36-2 and won, and he made it to a third season with the Browns.
He may end up getting another head coaching job.
I don't think that's ever going to happen unless it's in the American Alliance of American Football or something like that. He's not going to be coaching as a head coach in the NFL anytime soon. That'll do it for us this week. Remember, go to aacounty.org, pull up the football schedules, go to a high school turf field near you to see some great playoff action this week. Bill and I are headed to Cincinnati. We'll talk to you next week with another edition of the Gridiron Review.